After 9 days of intense action, the stage is now set for the semi-finals of the Legends of Chess. Before we look at the likelihood of what's going to happen in the semi-finals, let's take a quick look at the preliminary rounds and what really helped these four people qualify for the semi-finals. Those who could make it and those who couldn't. This particular challenge involving the young players, all under 30, and those who are trying to just make their presence felt with their possibly their best years firmly behind them. So this was a very intriguing sort of a field. 6 legends and 4 youngsters, so to say, the champions of the new generation. So it actually turned out to be day after day. Of course, it turned out to be a series of contests which produced thrills in varying degrees. On one hand, we saw blunders galore. We saw brilliancies all over. Every player possibly came up with some new ideas or the other. And it was not just about winning the matches by playing well, it was also about saving some of the games by defending brilliantly. So overall, what we saw was, here was a world champ with a reputation to protect, and he did it marvelously. He didn't lose a single match, he won all 9, dominated the proceedings right after he beat Anish Giri, his rival on Twitter, more on the board, because over the board there's hardly a contest involving the two, because the world believes that Magnus is way ahead of Anish Giri. This kind of a battle of wits, it has got the imagination of the fans on both sides of the line. So each time they play each other, it's considered a grudge battle, although over the board there is no question of doubting Magnus Carlsen's superiority. But once he started his campaign by getting rid of his rival, an annoying rival sometimes on the board, because remember, these two had met in the final of the last tournament, where Magnus just about managed to win, and Anish Giri once again proved that in the last few months, the way he had improved in the shortest format of the game and even the shorter time formats, and also willing to win a few games by taking some risks. Otherwise, the number of draws that we saw involving Anish Giri was noticeably high. But this year he has shown that he has really worked hard on the shorter format and how to deal with the shorter format of the game. So thereafter we had Magnus Carlsen proving his superiority, except that one match against Ivanchuk. I think he was comfortable in most of the matches, and of course somehow there were matches where he wasn't very happy with the margin of victory or the kind of chances that he missed. But in the end, the master just prevailed. And if we look at Nepomniachtchi, again, terrific consistency, except that he lost to Magnus Carlsen in a very close game, and also his surprise loss in the last round, but then that didn't hurt, that didn't really reflect on the standings. So Anish Giri, the person who came third, he somehow very quietly sneaked into the semi-finals, because the whole focus was around Magnus and around Nippo and all the big names. But Anish Giri just played very purposefully. His losses came only against those who finished ahead of him, that is Carlsen and Nippo, and then against the rest of the guys, he was somehow pretty good. He was quite strong. And even if his performances dipped a little, but it didn't really hurt his chances. Peter Swedler, now he was a surprise packet of the tournament so far. Nobody really gave him a chance to be in the semi-finals, but I've maintained from day one that what gave him some kind of an edge was the fact that he has been commentating on this tour from the first day, and he has got a very close look at every single game played. He would analyze these games day in and day out, and his analysis are quite supreme in that sense, because the quality that he brings in with his analysis and to the commentary that he's involved in, it is really, I mean, he really makes a value addition to what he does best. So Swidler, I'm sure, gained from that experience of watching the games closely than any other of the so-called legends. They all did their homework. but Swidler definitely gained. And over the board, his superiority came through the way that he defended the position. He wasn't very comfortable attacking, but his reading of the position was so good. So for me, Peter Swidler turned out to be the biggest surprise. I mean, nobody gave him a chance ahead of Anand and Kramnik and some of the other names, but give credit to the 8-time Russian champion. He really stood his ground when it mattered, and he's done his reputation no harm. So these are the top 4. Let's start with Vishwanathan Anand. He was the highest seed among the bigger names who were not part of the current tour, so to say. He was invited for this event and he made his debut, but somehow it was a debut to forget because he didn't quite get into his groove. Although he had 2 great moments. One against Kramnik, where he started off well. He almost pulled off the masterpiece of the tournament, but somehow faltered in the end. And then, of course, his victory against Boris Gelfand. Short work, 2.5 half. So apart from these 2, Anand had nothing to look forward to or nothing to reflect on. He had very few takeaways from the tournament. But if you look at Ivanchuk, now remember Ivanchuk and Anand, they played together for the first time in 1985 in the World Juniors, and again in the 1987 edition of the World Championship, the World Juniors, Anand came first and Ivanchuk was second. Now imagine 33 years later, around the same date, because Anand won the World Championship on 2nd of August 1987, and we are almost there now, just 3 days away from that day, the anniversary of Anand's 33rd year of his winning the World Juniors. And three decades have passed, more than 3 decades. But the 2 fighters are still around and regaling us with some fantastic chess. Among the rest, Peter Lecco was disappointing even after starting with a win. Ding Liren, of course, struggled with his internet connectivity. Despite being number 2 seed, he just couldn't take off. Had his opportunities, couldn't convert them. It's just towards the fag end of the tournament that he won a couple of games, couple of matches, but then that wasn't enough. Boris Gelfand was another great competitor in the field. He did show the kind of stuff that he's made of by winning the tie-breaking Armageddon game against none other than Ian Nepomniachtchi, and that I think was his biggest takeaway, because he still showed that the shortest format, which is virtually called a shootout, 5 minutes to one player, 4 minutes to the other, no increment, and for somebody who is over 50, rather the oldest player at 52 in this field, to take the tiebreaker against a player like Nepo was something incredible. So overall, when we take a look at this tournament, we'll definitely be very pleased with the performances of some of these older players. And remember, this is not a classical time format where you have more time to think and play. This is virtually a shootout. And then, to make matters a little more difficult or more challenging for the older players, you have to make your moves with the help of a mouse. And again, you have to be a little more computer savvy, or to make these moves in a match which is competitively played. This is not just for fun. There is prize money at stake. So every mistake can cost you something more than just a game. So it was tough for the legends, but it was great to see one of them sneak into the semifinals. Looking ahead to the semifinals, well, let's take the first one involving Magnus Carlsen and Peter Swidler. Remember, Swidler somehow survived in a couple of games against Magnus Carlsen when they played each other in the league, but eventually it was Magnus Carlsen who proved superior. But here, I'm sure Magnus Carlsen will come with a different frame of mind. He is the one who comes pretty prepared, more than the usual one, when it comes to the big games. And somehow, even when he wins, he shows his dissatisfaction because he's not quite happy with the quality of his game. So somehow against Peter Swidler, he was not very happy with his quality. So that's the reason why I'm saying that expect Magnus Carlsen to come very hard at Peter Swidler. And Swidler, of course, has nothing to lose. He has already exceeded expectations. But then he has a reputation again. I mean, he was the best Russian player for some time, and now that he's not considered among the elite, but he gets this huge opportunity to be there and challenge the world champion. So he has nothing great to lose, but a lot to gain. And trust Peter Swidler to come up with some great defensive tactics, because he's known for that. He finds some great ideas when he's under stress. So we can expect a close battle there. But then I still feel that Magnus Carlsen will win in 2 sets. Now remember, these are semifinals with the best of 3 sets, where you have to win at least 2. And here the other change in the rule is that after the rapid games, there is no Armageddon directly. In between, you have 2 blitz games as well. So this is the difference between the preliminary and the semifinals. Now talking about the second semifinals, Anish Giri plays Nippo. Now again, Nippo, the man who beat him in the league, Nippo will again be very motivated to undo the damage to his confidence after he lost to Boris Gelfand in the last league match. And Nippo is playing pretty fast. He's sharp. Whereas Anish Giri has just learned the tricks to stay afloat in this format and among the top players. So expect a battle where Nippo will be pressing for victory in a hurry, and Anish Giri would like to take the game into the Armageddon, hope that he gets black and he draws. That's probably his best chance to survive the semifinals. We'll start with the round 3 game involving Vishwanathan Anand and Vladimir Kramnik. This was a masterpiece that somehow got spoiled by some brilliant defense by Vladimir Kramnik. Now here, the credit should go to Anand for creating magic over the board around the 30-34 moves. Now, why I'm calling it one of the better games of the tournament, and that too when the person who plays brilliantly doesn't actually win the game, is because of the originality that Anand showed around that time, and then he kept up the pressure. There was a lot of action, a lot of intense drama in this match, and Anand, around the 34th move, offered one piece. By the 36th move, that is 2 moves later, he offered another piece. So after 36 moves, if you look at the board for black, his bishop is hanging, his knight is hanging. That means white has to just take it. It is there for the asking. But Kramnik can't just afford to take any of those. And then his wisdom prevails. He drags on without accepting those. And finally, we reach a point where Anand somehow loses the track apparently on a winning course, but Kramnik somehow finds the right resources, comes back, and then he's giving a series of checks to Anand towards the 60 odd moves, and around the 63rd move, Anand misses a very definite winning trick. He just has to block that check of queen to Anand's king with his knight. Now he misses this trick and immediately resigns because there's another check that follows, and soon there'll be an inevitable mate. Now, what we have to remember here is the players didn't have time to look at the options available to them, because this was in the dying seconds of the game, and both players give credit to the brilliance of these two individuals, 2 former world champions, dishing out moves in a flash and playing some brilliant chess and giving the chess world immense joy, irrespective of the fact that Anand couldn't win this and Kramnik defended it well to eventually win the game. Kramnik gave credit to Anand, and he also said that it wasn't easy for any player to cope with this kind of defeat, and also said that it was a pleasure to be part of such a game because you don't play such games every day. My next pick is the one involving Peter Swidler and Magnus Carlsen in round 7 of the tournament. Now here, I've chosen this game because of Peter Swidler's brilliance that he showed in defending a virtually lost position. Magnus Carlsen was all over him. He was about to deliver the finishing touches with his queen, bishop, and other resources, but somehow we reached a point where around the 34th move, Magnus Carlsen decided that okay, he could exchange the queens and win the position in opposite colored bishop, and of course the pawns on the board. But that was not to be, and Peter Switter just saw his chance that yes, this position was defendable, and for more than 20, close to 30 moves, Magnus Carlsen tried his best, and Swedler defended the position. So between say from move 40 to move number 69, it was Peter Swidler defending the position stoutly, and Magnus Carlsen finally giving up in desperation and agreeing to a draw. So this is what chess is all about. Sometimes you don't have to play brilliantly to win or to even get that half a point extra from a drawn position, but it's also very important for you not to give up in a position which apparently seems lost, but you fight and you defend and at least save half a point, and that's what exactly Peter Swidler showed that day. My third game of the tournament so far is the one involving Magnus Carlsen again against Ian Nepomniachtchi in the 8th round. Now these two individuals in top form, they were expected to produce a great clash, and they did. And in one of these 4 games that we saw in the rapid format, one of the decisive games, which of course went Magnus Carlsen's way, here he showed what brilliance is all about, what he's capable of when he's playing with less time, and he's able to see something so much more, something special of course, but so much more on the board, and that too against a man who is in brilliant form. And this particular game for me is very special for its execution. For about midway through the game, just past the opening phase and a little deeper into the middle game, what you see is these are all set moves which have been played in the past, and we know that Nepomniachtchi was quite comfortable with the position, but somehow Carlsen finds a trick. Now he maneuvers the position in such a way that he is able to get his bishops into action beautifully there, and thereafter the way he gets his queen into dominant squares and finally launches an attack with his bishop and knight, and leaves his opponent helpless. Now here the best part is the execution. It is not that Carlsen was threatening to finish the match in a hurry. The pieces look a little out of harmony, but give credit to Carlsen. He gets his queen, he gets his knight, gets his bishop in action, and leaves his opponent completely helpless. And he resigns when he's facing a 6 to 8 move forced mate. So it is a fantastic finish by Magnus Carlsen, and that's why it's one of the best games of the tournament for me.